to Certified Examiner Training, covering mechanical operation on the score sheet. You're going to find this in the upper right corner, mechanical operation. Got two sections, danger potential and lack of skill. Not a lot of points, but definitely you will see these on the exam. First up, the signal under danger potential. When an applicant fails to manually cancel the turn signal, if it does not shut off automatically, or if the applicant signals when no turn or lane change is being made. Most often you'll see this when someone has made a lane change and the signal usually does not turn itself off and the turn signal just continues as they drive down the road. Typically I'll score this after we travel over 100 feet and usually up to 200 or so by the time I get my pen up there to circle signal. Hands. Now you'll see there's hands in this section, also one hand. So hands is when an applicant is driving unnecessarily with less than 1/3 of the steering wheel between their hands. They've got their hands too close together. Even though they're both on the steering wheel, they're just too close together. Or if the hands are positioned anywhere other than on the outside of the rim, or they're only using their fingers to hold the steering wheel. Remember to only score this when the car is moving. Now remember, don't score hands if an applicant's hand position is changing, or inside the rim of the steering wheel during turns. So you'll see this sometimes. People get a little lazy and they'll reach their hand inside the steering wheel to grab it and pull it down. This is not good, but it's not scored on the driving test. Now if the applicant has their elbow resting on the windowsill while driving, you're going to score this one here, arm. Now you'll see in this photo the applicant does have their hand on the wheel. Oftentimes you'll see someone pinch the wheel or not use it at all. So you may score arm and one hand if you see just one hand or just pinching the wheel or not touching the wheel at all. So you might score arm and one hand. So position is when someone is seated in a manner impairing vision or vehicle control. So if a person is sitting too close to the steering wheel such that it impairs their ability to steer the car, that's going to be a problem. You're going to score position. You're also leaning way so far over and driving with just that one hand there. You're probably going to score the one hand penalty in addition to also being out of position, not being able to use that right arm to reach up and control the vehicle. Next up is the one hand penalty under danger potential. Unnecessary one hand driving. You'll see this a lot when people are changing gears. Even if they're in an automatic and they're used to shifting gears, they like to rest their hand on the gear shifter. So an example is given here. Shifting or giving hand signals while turning, or extended driving while unnecessarily leaving hand on the shifter. Now how far do they go before you score this? Again, I'm going to go about it for me, I'm going to go about 100 feet, and then I'm going to start reaching my pen up to one hand, and if they don't have their hand back on the wheel by the time I circle it, then it's going to be scored. The clutch. If the applicant fails to depress the clutch when starting the engine and the car lurches forward. This is a very specific penalty, and only when you're starting the car and the car lurches forward. Now you'll see there's two gear penalties. Just as before, there's also two clutch penalties. We'll get to that next one in a minute. So gear, the 2-point variety, is if the applicant puts the selector in the improper gear, causing the vehicle to go in the wrong direction and the car moves. So in this example, if you've got the car in reverse here, but the car starts moving forward, doesn't have to go very far. You know that they thought they were in one gear, ended up moving in the other direction. You're going to score this one here, gear, 2 points. Unnecessary hard braking. You'll see this error, and now you probably won't see it this grievous where both tires are lifting off the ground. I have seen it where, of course, my seatbelt locks up, and that's usually the standard I apply for unnecessary hard braking. And you'll see this when an applicant races up to a stop situation, such as a red light or a stop sign, and then brakes so hard because it didn't prepare to slow down earlier. Unnecessary hard braking. In the lack of skill section, we're looking at the clutch here. This is the other clutch penalty for people who are struggling with the clutch, jerky clutch engagement. is the standard we're given. Again, this is only for vehicles with manual transmissions. Stall. We're simply given two words here. Stalls engine. Now, if the car is at fault, please do not score this. This is listed in an earlier section of the manual. We are not to penalize applicants for mechanical problems with the car. The start error. If the applicant is having difficulty starting the engine, if the car is turned off while on the test. Again, do not score if the vehicle is at fault. And do not score if the applicant grinds the ignition. That's not considered a penalty on the driving exam. Next up, races. If your applicant excessively races their engine, maybe it's in neutral or in park, or it could even be in drive as long as the tires are not spinning. We'll get to that one when you see spins here in a later penalty in this section. Excessively races engine. Use your best judgment here. Score it if they're racing. Very rare. I've perhaps only scored this twice in 10 years. This is the other gear penalty, and this one is just for improper shifting. They're clashing gears, failing to shift when necessary, or starts in the improper gear. Parking brake. So if your applicant fails to release the parking brake, this is where you're going to score that here. Now remember, do not score this in the parking lot. Right? So once you're starting out, the applicant still has their parking brake on. Tell them so that they don't damage their car. Also, once an applicant starts to move during the test with the parking brake on, score the error, but also alert them to release the parking brake. We don't want them to damage their cars, or yours if they're using your school's car. Control. This is a catch-all for lacks knowledge of the vehicle's controls and or does not properly use them. You can see this a lot with windshield wipers if they're really struggling with it, or if they're struggling to adjust mirrors perhaps. That'd be a little strict because that would be inside the parking lot. But if they're struggling with things out on the field, you can use this here. This is pretty rarely scored. Things such as windshield defroster, wipers, lights, etc. Now remember, if their vision is obstructed due to the windows being fogged by rain, ice, snow, or other conditions, and the customer proceeds without taking action, causing the driving to be hazardous, you need to score this as a dangerous action. All scoring stops. Return to the school in the most direct route. At this point, help them clear the windshield so they can see. And you can get back safely as well. Finally, under mechanical operations, spins. Your applicant spins wheels excessively on a wet or slick road. You're going to score that here. Not very rare, not very common, somewhat rare, but I have scored it. Next up, left and right turns. These are the big points. See you then.